Welcome to Bloom Today. We have an inspirational show for you. We're going to be talking about moving beyond disappointment and pain.
Hi, I'm Paula Wallace, president of Bloom in the Dark, and this is
Ginny Priz, the single-handed serenity coach. Welcome to Bloom Today, where we talk about internal and external brokenness and how you can heal,
so that you can use the fertilizer of your past to bloom today. Hey, welcome everybody. Today we are talking about moving beyond disappointment and pain, kind of getting past grief and grieving, which can be for a person or for a loss
of a
of
dream,
all different kinds.
Loss
a
of
relationship.
expectations, disappointment. I mean, that's disappointment, right? Loss of expectations.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad we've defined that.
Yeah, and it's hard to get to a place to laugh again.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
When you're in that place of grieving and pain and loss and
With your heart so deeply broken. It's tough.
It really is. And the process is
messy.
It's messy, and it doesn't just like have this timeline that's easy to track. It's not a formula where you go from this to this to this to this. Though there's the 5 steps of grieving, and we can go into that. But everybody's journey is so different, and there's so many ways that instead of processing it, we run away from it. We go into denial about it. We don't actually deal with it. We're not real about it, which then just postpones when we actually have to face.
Right.
Because those great coping mechanisms that are escape, run away from, and ignore, I haven't found them to ever actually heal or restore anything.
Oh, the coping mechanisms? No, they don't do that. No, unfortunately not. But they do take us out of the pain for at least a little while, but it doesn't actually help or heal. Get through to something that's actually going to be lasting.
Because you have to grieve.
Absolutely. And I know that when I was in, I had broken up with my fiance, and that I think was probably the deepest heartbreak that I had in my life, and the deepest grieving that I had to go through. But at that point in my life, I also had not really grieved and walked through a lot of the disappointments and pains from my past from before that. So when that broke my heart, it was all of the things beforehand that had broken my heart were also coming into play and hurting and not allowing me to really heal from the inside. So it felt like the whole world was falling apart. It truly did. I could not see beyond what was actually happening in my story, in my life, and it just felt like this was it. This was the end, and my heart could never, ever heal from it.
Well, because you were probably having compiled grief. The grief of that plus the grief of every other loss and heartbreak that you hadn't properly processed. And that kind of just, when it blows up, it can blow up really badly.
It absolutely can. And you just don't know what that process is going to look like or how it's going to feel. But I know it does feel better after you've gone through the healing and the grieving and walked through all of those emotions. Has it been the same for you?
I was thinking through, there have been a lot of places of brokenness and pain, but the grieving aspect of it, I think I went through the deepest level of that in grieving the loss of my marriage. And my husband did not die. It was through divorce and a very messy set of circumstances. But I realized where I wasn't really grieving the actual marriage. I was grieving the loss of dreams and expectations and a belief of what it should have been, what I had fantasized it was.
Right.
All of the things that I had built up in dreams and fairy tales, and I know it's bad right now, but it's going to be better, and it's going to get fixed, and this is who God chose for me, so it's got to just suddenly get better. And so when it didn't, and when choices were made that I didn't get to control or fix or do anything about, I had to. Well, I ran away for a couple of years. From processing. I ran away from dealing with the grief and the loss.
Oh, it's not like you went to Jamaica and had a vacation.
I so wish I could have literally run away. But emotionally, mentally, from all these issues, I just wasn't able or ready or willing to really face and process that stuff and grieve it properly.
Yeah.
So when I finally did, there was a lot of pain and damage to process and work through, and it has been a grieving process. There's still some times when something hits me and I realize the loss that represented. But as I've walked through that healing process, it has become less and less of a trigger for a tailspin. It's pain, but more the memory of pain than new pain. Does that make sense?
Right, feeling like it just happened yesterday. That same sting that had happened.
And I've also grieved through a whole lot of other things that one event triggered, kind of like all of the ungrieved pain and loss in my life.
Yeah.
And as I've kept intentionally working through and allowing myself to feel and process and deal with the pain, it has made all of it less damaging, less painful. And it's messy, ugly, lots and lots of tears.
Yeah.
But the healing and the growth and the resiliency that has come out of that is pretty incredible.
I completely agree. Lots and lots of tears.
Yes. But God says he'll bottle them all up.
Yes, he will.
And that in heaven, in the new reality that we're working towards, there is no more crying and no more tears. And
You'll
I'm
wipe
like,
away every single one.
that'd be amazing.
No more. That's fantastic. I can't wait. I look forward to it. But until then, I actually at this point have learned to embrace the tears and embrace the grieving that needs to get done. And I actually look for it and think, where is it that I need to grieve? What is it that I need to do? What am I not looking at? Because I know that that's so harmful.
Scheduled meltdowns.
Scheduled meltdowns. Yes.
A friend of ours taught us that.
Yes, a very wise friend of ours.
Very wise friend of us. The scheduled meltdown, the place where we're detoxifying emotionally.
Yes. For the next
Through
half hour,
cleansing
I'm
tears.
just going to let it all out. And then I will, kind of try and put myself back together. But I have this time to just let it all out, because so often we're just trying to do this mix of grieving where we're trying to keep it all together and we're trying to grieve and we're trying to keep it all together and we're trying to grieve. But if we just give ourselves that time, then that can be a really healing period of time.
And sometimes we need to do it every day. When we're going through an intense process, to really just
multiple
lean
times
into
a day.
yes, lean into the pain. But it was interesting that I think everyone can help understand the grieving process and help themselves learn to be okay with grieving and working through disappointment and pain through some specific tools that give them a chance to kind of see it differently.
Absolutely.
Which for me, one of them was having an eternal perspective. Stuff happens here that really, really hurts and is devastating and damaging so much of the time. But this isn't the end of it.
Amen to that.
Like, that's such a big deal. In Psalm 16:8, it says, I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With him at my right hand, I will not be shaken.
Yes, with him at
Right
my
hand.
right hand.
He has your right hand, doesn't he?
He does. He's holding it up in heaven.
Because he didn't give it to you down here.
No.
So
Again, the eternal perspective of, well, I could say, oh, gee,
you don't have your right hand.
I've got this loss. Or I could say, you know what, when he comes again, I'm going to get my perfect body, and then I will have two hands, and I will be made. I was made perfectly for what he wanted here on this earth. But I also, that's the perspective of the eternal perspective of, this is part of a bigger plan. He has other plans for me as well. He can give me that perfect body later on if he wants to. This isn't necessarily set in stone, and this isn't necessarily a problem, because I'm seeing eternally, not just confined to this body, this moment in time.
Right, because we aren't just in a timeline of earthly tangible things. There is that eternal, spiritual, otherworld part of
eternity,
which is a whole lot longer than this itty bitty space of time. But then when we have that pain and we are here and we are in our bodies and it does really, really, really hurt, then I process things where I have taken that deep-seated agony and pain and gone, God, here it is. I'm surrendering it to you. I sure can't tolerate or handle or manage it myself.
Yes.
I'm just, maybe some people can. I'm really not strong enough.
No, I don't think anyone, really can. I don't think we weren't built that way.
No.
I love to just have the idea of opening my heart to him, and that image to me is of just surrendering it to him, but bringing him into the pain and inviting him into that place to heal it, because he can supernaturally heal what I cannot, but feeling it and letting him in is part of that process. Psalm 147:3 says he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. Man, it's just, if he's going to do it, he can do it supernaturally. I'm going to let him do it. I'm not going to try and figure that out myself.
Right, and sometimes we want him to have done it in a certain time frame or under our guidelines. Well, God, you should do it now, or you should do it this way, or it should feel like this. And my experience is not that way. It has not been where it's like an on-demand push button. Healed now, no more pain, no more. Yeah, I haven't personally experienced that.
Yeah. But
I have had places. One time, 2 years after just a devastating thing happened, in that one area, I cried for 3 hours straight. And I cried out hurt and hurt and hurt and hurt, begged him to take it. And in that place, it went from daily agony and dysfunction about this one thing to that him literally healing that supernaturally, where from that point on, I had a memory of the hurt, but it wasn't a fresh, raw hurt. Now, mind you, that was a little piece. I had a lot of other hurts that he had not miraculously healed that way, but I knew what it felt like when he did.
Right.
Because that was so...
It's an amazing gift.
It was huge.
That's wonderful. And then when we have that, whether it took a long time or whether it was a miraculous healing, we can choose gratitude, which is another big piece of healing from it, is to, God, here's my pain. Please come into this. And I'm so thankful for everything that you've done for me and given to me.
Well, when you're talking about in everything, give thanks.
Oh, yeah.
Not for everything necessarily.
Yes, that's a very good distinction.
Yeah, in everything, give thanks. And I realized that I started focusing on thanking him for being there despite the pain.
Right.
Thanking him for the places he had restored. Thanking him for walking me through the healing journey, the process, the year's worth, but focusing on in that trial, pain, damage, loss, to keep that relationship with him and be thanking him in the midst of that. And that was a whole different perspective too, because I sure didn't want, my natural self did not want to be grateful for anything. I wanted a pity party, and I wanted everybody to join my pity party in that place. But being thankful doesn't mean I didn't grieve or hurt or cry.
Right.
It just meant I was choosing him and gratitude
in the midst.
In the middle of it.
And if you want to learn more about this topic and how you can grieve and move on from disappointment and pain, you can download our coaching tool at bloomtodaytv.com. And what we'll do is ask you some questions to help you apply this to your life where you're at, and then give you some exercises to take the next baby step forward into healing.
And today our guest, I actually read her book at a time where I needed to grieve some things I had not processed. And even though what I was grieving was not the same as what her loss was, it had a very clear effect on my life and giving me the permission and ability to grieve some stuff I had not given myself the right to grieve, which was really, really huge. And I'm excited to have her come on the show.
Wonderful. Author and speaker, Julie Hunt. Would you come join us in the kitchen, Julie?
Can you give her a hand, Jenny?
Welcome. Here's your
hand.
Here we go.
Thank you very much.
You are very welcome.
That. Now I'm going to give you back your right hand because I know that God has your right hand in his righteous right hand.
So, amen.
There you go. That was cool. I love how you have processed your losses and hearing how you have. You guys, you should write a book on it.
We don't need to. You wrote a book on it.
I did write a book on it. Yeah.
Yes. Tell us about your book a little bit.
You know, 13 and a half years ago, I found myself being that proverbial wife that gets the phone call from her husband's boss that says, we believe that David's been in a car accident, and we'll let you know when we know more about where to head. And they called back about 5 minutes later and said that he was on his way to Vanderbilt, which is our Trauma One center here in the Middle Tennessee area. And I knew in my heart that if he was headed to Vanderbilt, his injuries were severe.
Right.
And, but being a woman of God and a strong woman of faith and knew the word and walked it out daily already, I hit my knees. And I immediately asked God to be with me, although I had no idea what was coming.
Right.
I knew he was with me.
Yeah.
And I engaged our family and friends and church to pray us through as I headed toward the hospital that day. And I was fortunate. Actually, David lived 5 hours at the hospital, and I was able to see him, not talk with him. I was told he could hear me, but he couldn't converse with me. But I actually had the amazing privilege of holding his hand when he passed from this life to the next.
Wow.
And that sounds so sad, and it was sad, but I consider it such an honor that God let me experience that and be the last thing talking to him and having him squeeze my hand as he left. And
grabbing onto that gratitude like we were just talking about.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's the little things, because there are some women who get phone calls and it's already happened. They're gone.
Yeah.
Or it's happened far away. And so all of the things, I believe that our journeys are always with Christ, working things together for our good, you know, and that was part of that. But boy, do you have to go through a lot of fertilizer.
A lot of fertilizer. We do.
You have to plow through a lot of fertilizer to find those truths that are, you know, that pass, you know, our understanding. And so that was the journey and the lesson, that finding the beauty in the midst of the ashes and finding the recovery that God had for me as I walked through this, but not necessarily giving it to me immediately or making it better today, right now. You know, there were moments of that, but we have to walk through it. Our journeys are about walking through, not going to a destination.
Right.
And so that's how it was with me.
And that's got to be very intentional. I mean, you have to fight all of that grief that's coming on you to find those things.
Absolutely. And in my journey, I was sad and I was grieving, but really, you know, I thought, well, gosh, you know, I'm a strong believer and God can do this. You know, the books say, you know, 5 to 7 years. Let's do this in 3.
Right.
You know, and I kept trying to rush through it.
Yeah.
And, you know, now I can look back in hindsight and see God, you know, saying, oh, baby, bless your heart. You know, we're not going to work through this that way. This isn't a destination that you get to and then it's all better.
Right.
This is finding me in the midst of the sorrow, in the midst of the tears, letting me store those tears for you in golden bowls, catching each one of them.
And and when I was reading your book, one of the things that struck me is it seemed like some of your most intentional, deepest grieving came after you were remarried.
Yeah. And that was confusing to me because I really, God did a real solid for me in helping me find another love of my life. And rather quickly, I married Kai within 2 years after David's accident. And I thank him for it. I just think it's wonderful. But what I didn't realize is that some of my most intense grieving would be with my husband there, my new husband there with me, getting me, helping me and encouraging me through that. So I was very thankful for that, but it surprised me and it confused me. And of course the enemy wants to come along and plant shame and doubt and steal from us a beautiful thing that God's trying to do for us.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he'll use other people who don't understand, or he'll use our own thought patterns that we're not surrendering to him. He'll use whatever he can to get us off track. So I found that in that year 5, 6, and 7, when I really thought I should be emerging, everything's great now, I found myself still going around the mountain of despair and hopelessness and shame. And that was confusing to me. And it got very hopeless for me because I thought, what is wrong with me? Here God has put my life back together, but it's not the life I wanted. I'm still incredibly sad. I still wish that my husband could have walked our daughter down the aisle when she got married and not her little brother. You know, I wish. And one day when I was just crying out in despair and hopelessness, you know, it was almost like God just arrested me and said, you know, we can keep going around this mountain, or you can make a decision to get out of the pit and to flip a switch and set a new mindset, start really activating what my word says, not just reading it and having it up here as head knowledge, but activating it so it will sink down into your heart and transform your life.
Wow.
And, you know, we learn in Romans 5 that suffering produces perseverance.
Yes, it does.
And so it was the perseverance that really held me to keep going on, that God wasn't finished. So that perseverance that the suffering had already produced in my life started to be activated. And then the perseverance brings character, and character hope. And then it goes on to say, hope doesn't disappoint. And that's where I was going. That was my getting out of the pit plan, is walking through that Romans 5, because the fact of the matter is, Jesus already told us that in this world, we're going to have stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to have
messy
trouble.
stuff.
Yeah. I'm just so encouraged of how when Jesus was getting ready to exit and the cross was coming, all that in John, I think it's around 14 and 15, he's telling his disciples, I mean, he knows what's coming, and he's trying to prepare them because it's going to get ugly, and it's going to get ugly, and they're going to be confused. They're going to be disappointed. They're going to be filled with shame and all of the things that we feel today in the 21st century. And so I love that he already said, hey, in this world you'll have troubles, but take heart, I've overcome. You don't have to walk it out alone. The victory is already yours. Is the sadness there? Yes. I loved what you said, Paula, about grief is a part of our experience. Disappointment, sorrow, that is part of our life here in this fallen world. But I love that our Savior has already taken care of it. He didn't, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell him that it's going to be hard. Oh, ooh, you know, or, oh wow.
He told us.
You know, he told us and he demonstrated it. He demonstrated it. And I love that even in that place of grieving, when he was going to raise Lazarus from the dead, he knew what was happening. But
he cried.
The human part of him had the emotion of mourning, of sorrow, of grief, of not only his own, but Mary and Martha. He was in touch with that. And I love then it gave me permission to feel the sadness, whether it was the day at the hospital or if it was 5 years later. If I still had sadness to process, it was okay.
But there's a lie that a lot of people do believe, that if you just find the next husband or the next relationship or the next replacement, that somehow or another is supposed to just instantly erase all the other,
make everything okay. That'll just make it better. I'll be happy when.
Right, and that is such a lie. Because it's not that God doesn't bring healing and restoration through that next piece when He provides it. But that's not what makes you instantly healed. You're getting remarried did not go zap. You're perfect now. Fairy tale again, kind of thing. And I loved how your book shared that, because it made it real that whatever loss it is, I lost 2 babies during pregnancy. I've had to grieve those, and I've had to re-grieve and go through that process. And your book gave me permission to work through that process. One of them was due December 23rd. So here we are coming up, you know, every year we have the holiday coming up, and I go, okay, God, here we are. And I have been able to grieve different levels of that loss. I have 3 kids, but having 3 kids doesn't just zoom fix.
That's right.
It's not a replacement child. There's no replacement husband. We are individuals, and we feel for each one of those individuals.
That's absolutely
just
right.
the way God did. God does every day, because we're made in His image, and all of us are important and have that place. So, Julie, how did you know that you were, as we say, blooming, coming out of this and coming into a different season?
Well, when I flipped the switch, God started teaching me day by day how to manage my sorrow. What He had told me is that you are starting to manage your sorrow now, not letting your sorrow manage you. You're telling your sorrow what to do.
Big change.
Yeah, that was a big change for me, because what it did is give me the freedom to be in sorrow, but know that I'm moving out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm about to get up. The name of the book.
Right. That's a great name, by the way.
Thank you. That's how it came, because it's like, today, God, I'm in this big comfy chair and I don't even want to go outside.
Yeah.
I'm hanging on by a thread, but I'm going to get up. One of these days, I'm going to get up. I'm going to get out of this chair. And that actually comes from a verse in the Bible, Micah 7:8, that says, do not gloat over me, my enemy. Though I have fallen, I will rise. Though I sit in darkness, the Lord will be my light.
I've got to add a funny story to that, just because there's so much hardship in loss and grief.
Yeah.
But I had texted my son, my oldest son, who's 17, I had texted him asking him if he was awake yet, because I was gone and checking on his schedule. And he actually took his phone, took a photograph of the cover of your book and texted it to me. I'm about to get up.
That's awesome.
I laughed so hard, but I was like, I've got to tell Julie that the hope and the joy side of that, God can use that in all kinds of little places.
Yeah. Well, and it's important to know, because as we talked about, being in this world where there are troubles, terrible things are happening out there, and terrible things happen to us. God didn't cause those things to happen to us. We are in a world at war, and there is an enemy that is out to destroy us. But the beautiful thing is that God will take us in the midst of that and renew that place and help us learn to manage those sorrows. And so,
heal.
yes, and so the beauty in all of that is that we show up every day giving our lives to Him and saying, here I am, I'm going to magnify you, God. I'm going to make you bigger than this problem. Because when I make you bigger than the problem diminishes. And that's what He has for us.
Yes. Oh my gosh. We don't have to make Him bigger. He's already enormous.
That's right. Yeah.
We just have to
See him.
recognize and see how big He really is and how powerful He truly is, and recognize again the eternal perspective of, this isn't where the story ends. This isn't just my small life that's affected and going on here. This goes on bigger, badder, better.
Yeah.
That's what God brings to the table, all of that power.
Amen.
And all that healing power along with it.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Yay.
And Julie, thank you so much for sharing, because you are our ex-victim of the week.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yeah, so we have the reminder to bloom today. So you can use the Bloom in the Dark or Bloom Today, depending on how your day is going.
Okay.
You can have your coffee.
Beautiful.
And the ex-victim tattoo that matches this, which is, again, our statement to say, even when you've been the victim of grief and loss and damage of any kind, that you can find the hope and the blooming in that, and that Christ's resurrection life came out of a dark, dank grave. It wasn't in the sunshine. Yeah. And so we celebrate you and the fact that not only have you done that, but you're using your story to help provide that hope and healing and the permission to grieve that you have in your book. And
thank you.
The fact that you use the fertilizer thing with our saying that says that we use the fertilizer of our past to bloom today.
Yeah, that's good.
A free PDF copy of the Bloom in the Dark book and a full list of Bloom Today's coaching tools can be found on bloomtodaytv.com. Then visit Bloom Today's Facebook group for deeper conversation.